The effectiveness of your therapy is really very impressive. Can you highlight some significant findings?
Yes, thank you. I'd be glad to. Before starting, however, to do that, I think it would be a good idea to briefly describe the nature of the intervention that we derive from the primate deafferentation research. The CI therapy basic protocol has 4 components. First is intensive training. We began with 6 hours a day of training on 10 consecutive weekdays for patients with mild, moderate motor deficits, and 15 consecutive days of training for patients with moderate and moderately severe motor deficits. We later found that 3 hours of training per day yielded results that were equally as good as the longer 6-hour training periods. We pace performance so that whether we use 3 hours as we do now or 6 earlier, so that just 25 30-second trials per hour are given to these patients, since they frequently experience fatigue with more activity. The second component is shaping. The third component is the transfer package, which is a set of behavioral procedures designed to facilitate the transfer of treatment effect from the treatment setting to the activities of daily living, or as is frequently referred to ADL in the life situation, which is the bottom line, or should be the bottom line, in rehabilitation treatments. And the fourth component is restraint of use of the less affected arm by a padded mitt for a target of 90% of waking hours. That's for our treatment for the arms, but that restraint is an example of constraint, and in all of our treatments we use constraints of various types to get the person to use the not use the compensatory movements that they have been engaging in from the beginning after their damage to the central nervous system, and to use the affected function. Prior to our work, it was believed that no therapy was capable of improving the motor function of patients who had experienced stroke more than 1 year previously. Our first application of the primate deafferentation research findings to the upper extremity in humans with chronic stroke, well, that was our first application. The mean time since stroke for these patients was 4.4 years. Now, it was possible to produce an approximate 5 times increase in the amount of use of the more affected arm in the life situation with our treatment protocol. We have since worked with patients whose stroke was decades earlier. One patient was 50 years post-stroke. His event occurred when he was 5 years old, and we treated him when he was 55. There is no correlation whatever between chronicity and magnitude of treatment effect. There is a correlation of treatment effect with age at the time of treatment, but it is really quite modest. And so I'd like to note that there is hope for us yet, even those of us who are no longer 16. We next applied the basic CI therapy protocol to the upper extremity of patients with chronic traumatic brain injury. And then we modified the basic protocol so that it could be used for the lower extremities. Other efficacious extensions of the basic protocol have been to the upper extremity in young children with cerebral palsy. We've also worked with the lower extremities of patients with spinal cord injury. In addition, we have shown that CI therapy produces a large effect on the function and structure of the brain, and that the magnitude of the treatment effect is strongly correlated with the magnitude of the amount of increase of gray matter in motor areas of the cerebral cortex and the hippocampus. We developed an automated version of CI therapy. and are now nearing the end of a treatment study using the automated device in a patient's home on a distance basis. We call that tele-autosite. Autosite being the automated device and tele being the distance basis. We recently reported that it was possible to enable patients with chronic stroke with initially plegic hands, that is, paralyzed hands, to independently carry out many tasks, although they were doing it clumsily, but they could do it independently with the initially paralyzed hands, and to use them as effective helpers in many of the other tasks that we were testing. About 10 years ago, in collaboration with Friedemann Pulvermüller and others at the University of Constance, we showed that a protocol derived from CI therapy could be employed to improve speech in post-stroke aphasic patients. We called that CI Aphasia Therapy 1. And recently, we have been able to increase the original treatment effect by a factor of 5 times entirely by increasing and expanding the scope of the behavioral aspect of the treatment. We call that now CI Aphasia Therapy 2, or CIAT2. In the middle of the last decade, we carried out a 7 multi-site randomized controlled trial of CI therapy, which is, as you know, the quotes gold standard, end quotes, of proof in clinical fields, and obtained strongly positive results. At this point, there are approximately 600 papers reporting on the effects of CI therapy, and there is now more evidence for its efficacy than any other rehabilitation therapy by a very wide margin. Actually, it's a factor of 10. Currently, we are extending our lower extremity protocol to treat young children with cerebral palsy. Now, I know that this is a long litany of applications and it sounds like a lot, but it has been work that has stretched out over 26 years, so that we have managed to stay off street corners and out of pool rooms, and we've kept on working.